Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TANGO2 Research Foundation Rare Care Chronicles podcast. I'm Ann Geffen, Executive Director of the TANGO2 Research Foundation, and I'm so excited to be here with you today with three incredible parents from our community. And today's conversation is all about sharing real experiences, challenges, lessons learned, and hope from perspectives of families navigating life with TANGO2 disease. And we're grateful to have this space to connect, learn from one another, and support our community together. And before we begin, I want to note that this conversation among parents and caregivers is not intended to provide medical advice. Every individual's journey is unique, and listeners should always consult with their medical team regarding healthcare decisions. With that being said, I'm truly excited for today's discussion and honored to have these amazing parents join us. Let's get started. I want to first start with a round of introductions. If we can just go ahead and start with David. Welcome,
Hi
David.
everyone, thanks. My name's David Longman. I'm from Albany in Western Australia, and I'm the dad to Erling. Erling is an 8-year-old boy who has Tango 2, and he lives with two siblings and my wife, Catherine. The siblings are Ingrid, 11, and Mons, who's 3 years old.
Amazing. Welcome, David. Thank you for being here. And Amanda.
Hi, thank you for having me. So I'm based in the UK in Suffolk, and I'm mum to Sebi, who is 15. He has two brothers, one older and one younger. Both don't have Tango 2 disease, but Sebi does. He was diagnosed in 2000 and when he was eight. He was diagnosed when he was eight. I can't do the maths of that at the moment. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda. And last but not least, Amy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Clay. My daughter Katie has Tango 2. We live in Rochester, New York. She is our only child, and she was diagnosed in 2016.
So, so glad we can make this happen, even though we're in different parts of the world. I just want to go ahead and start at the beginning. And we know that most children with TANGO2 deficiency disorder appear to develop normally until infancy. And parents notice progressive delays around 12 months old. So if you can each tell me at what point did you realize that your child was developing a little bit different and maybe drift away from the typical path? David, can you start with Erling's development and when you started to get notice a little different signs, please?
Yeah, sure. As you described, I think we have a pretty typical story for Erling, and that was that he was normal when he was born, and we didn't have any concerns at all regarding Erling. And he developed normally until pretty much exactly 1 year old. And at 1 year old, he was talking and walking and doing all the things that 1 year olds are meant to do. And then, pretty much to the day of his first birthday, he had his first Tango 2 spell. And this was an unusual thing for us. It became a very usual aspect of our life, which was a sudden loss of skills. He had a hemiplegia, which is a sudden loss of the control of one side of his body. I can't remember if it was left or right. He was drooling, lethargic, and upset. This lasted for about 30 minutes, and then it resolved as we were driving him to the doctor's surgery. Now, this occurred in the morning. It was probably about 9 o'clock in the morning. And this was during a period of time where we were starting to wean him off night feeds. And when we got to the doctors, they said it was probably just that he was hungry and tired. And, 1 year olds do strange things. So we didn't really think about it after this. But in hindsight, we think that the weaning, he was probably fasted for a longer period than he'd ever been fasted. And we kind of know now that fasting can trigger things with Tango 2.
Right.
And then just one more point to make around this as well is that even though I said he was totally normal at birth, hindsight sort of, 2020. And we thought that when he was born, relative to his sister, that it was always harder to change his nappy. His legs were always a little bit tighter and sort of felt like you sort of had to crank them up a little bit. And we didn't think anything of it. We just thought every child's different and it didn't affect him in any way. But in hindsight, we're pretty sure that we could feel that spasticity in the lower limbs that is a pretty characteristic feature of Tango 2.
I saw you, Amy, actually, Amanda, Amy, both of you were nodding your head quite a bit, but Amy in particular, you were nodding your head when David was na mentioning the nap. Did you want to add to that a little bit with your experience with Kate?
So, so yeah, Kate, like Erling, developed normally until at least between age 1 and age 2 is when we probably first saw. Now, her being our first child, we didn't really know how other babies are. We had a friend watch Katie for a little bit when she was an infant, and she just happened to make a comment to me. She seems really stiff, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Never thought anything of it. But we saw really the first signs of the Tango 2 late one morning. She was sitting on the floor playing and couldn't sit up by herself. I looked down at her and she's kind of holding herself up on the floor. Like, she had a cold at the time. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe she's, not feeling well. And that's the reason. Again, hindsight, 2020, she takes her nap, she wakes up, she's fine. A lot of that, during her younger years. The first time we actually contacted the doctor, she couldn't walk a straight line. She was, our front door at the time was down a hallway that was maybe 10 feet long. And she started walking down the hallway to the front door and ended up leaning against the wall and with her head at 10 o'clock. That's when we called the doctor, went to the hospital, and all of the tests started and, results came back normal all the time. Beginning of a long journey.
Yeah. How about you, Amanda? Similar situation?
Really, really similar story.
Yeah.
So, I have a really distinct memory of playing. Seb was standing at our fridge playing with some fridge magnets. He was 11 months old, and I looked at him and he was behaving differently and he was standing a bit weird and he became quite distressed. And I just looked at him and I thought to myself, there's something wrong with you. What's going on in your little brain? What's happening to you? Um, and then he had a feed, he had a bottle of milk, and then had a sleep, and he seemed to be resolved. Uh, it was an extra long nap that day, I seem to remember it. And then it sort of snowballed from there, and it seemed to happen really, really regularly. And
Mm.
then those hemiplegic spells began. He started to walk at about 13 months old, but then really quickly lost loads of skills. He'd started babbling at about 12 months with a few words, and then it just stopped. All development just it stopped. He didn't progress anymore. And then when I look back, with hindsight and having had other children, I think all of his early milestones were delayed. He didn't babble. He just was quiet. He did not make any noise. He smiled late. He was finding difficult to sit independently. He crawled a bit later than the others did. And actually, with feeding from a very young age, he just had no mouth coordination. All the milk just
Mm.
ran down his face and he was soaked the whole time. And every feed was like that. So I never really knew how much he'd had because he just couldn't latch. He couldn't form that kind of suction with his mouth very easily. And when you look back, you think, oh, he was a messy baby. And actually, no, I think that was part of his kind of coordination and like delayed physical milestones. Looking
Yeah.
back, it
Mhm.
seemed normal, but I don't think it actually was when I really look back
Mm.
at it.
Mhm.
And then from there, from about 11 months old, we were in and out of hospital, test after test, everything coming back normal, and lots of hospital stays. And then he would have these episodes in the hospital as well, and they'd all come around and have a look at him, and then it would resolve, and he would be better and running around as he was, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay." Um, so yeah, it became a bit of a medical mystery from about the age of 11 months. But I definitely have this distinct memory of looking at him thinking, something's wrong. I know it. There's something wrong with you.
Wow, those are quite remarkable and similar stories. And Amy, you left us on a little bit of a cliffhanger there when you said the hospital, and you said it's a start of a really long journey. So I wanted to let you expand on that a little bit because we know that the word diagnostic odyssey is a very, very common word that is used in rare disease and specifically TANGO2 deficiency disorder and parents. So can you tell me about the misdiagnosis and the clinical dead end during your search for answers and just the diagnostic odyssey?
Yeah, so we had 13 years of trying to figure this out. So it's a long story. I'll try to summarize it. We've had that first time we took her to the hospital, it was, MRI, CT scan, spinal tap, the whole bit. And, everything's normal. Send us home. Start seeing specialists, neurologists, etc. We don't know. Episodic ataxia is something that, a lot of our kids were diagnosed with early. I spent hours, I can't even count the number of hours online trying to figure things out. I kind of pity the pediatrician now. All the emails he got from me, all the calls he got from me, just, what do you think about this? Because, having immunizations as a kid seemed to trigger, getting teeth as a kid seemed to trigger episodes. There was a lot of scary things doing the research, thinking about trying to figure out what was going on. We moved across the country a couple times. So we had episodic ataxia diagnosed in New York. We had episodic ataxia diagnosed in California on the other side of the United States. Yeah, very difficult journey. All specialists, were just had no idea what was going on. And the episodes, began when she was little, short, take a nap, have some juice, they would resolve themselves. I know at one time when she was younger, they were like, oh, we want to get blood work while she's having one of these episodes. So, we get called from the school, we pick her up, she has something to drink. By the time we get to the hospital, she's fine. I actually left a hospital because I was trying to demand them getting her blood work done, and they wouldn't take us right away. I'm like, you don't understand. It's going to go away, and they want this done when she's having the episode. And sure enough, she came out of it, and we left. So, yeah.
And can you describe us a moment when you finally received the diagnosis?
So when we went to Nevada, Katie actually had an episodic major incident, and we ended up going to Stanford Children's to see folks there. They did genetic testing and came back nothing. In 2016, we actually moved to Arizona, and I got a call from them saying, good news, we've got a diagnosis. I'm like, oh, really? Great. Yeah, there's one other boy that's been diagnosed with it, and there's someone on the East Coast that's being tested right now. We don't know a whole lot about it. We do hear that, there could be cardiac issues. Might want to see a cardiologist. At that point in time, we had actually started Katie on vitamins, and all those weird things had not happened. So we're like, okay, well, they don't know anything about it. We'll talk to her pediatrician. We'll just keep her on the vitamins, and things were, good, if you will. Yeah, it was, a relief that we had a diagnosis, but at the same time, nobody knows anything about it and can tell us what to do. And
Right.
we didn't know anybody else. I mean, yeah.
So I'm sure you were conflicted. I can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. It was a non-event, I guess, really, because, put a name on it, but can't tell me anything about it, so it doesn't really help.
Mm.
Yeah. And Dave, how about you? Because I mean,
Regarding,
Amy was what, 50, you said 15 years, Amy? That's
Kate was 13 when she was
13
diagnosed.
years. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean,
that's
Erling's diagnosis happened relatively quickly. I would sort of say that the developmental plateau, as Amanda said, was something that went along with those TANGO2 spells. As soon as he started having TANGO2 spells, development of skills just disappeared. He never really went backwards, he just didn't go forward. And that was really the time where we started going, okay, these spells are something, they seem to be increasing. They seem to be affecting the way that he's actually progressing, and we need to do something about it. So we went through a couple of processes of seeing neurologists, and that was actually quite easy for me to access because I worked as a EEG technologist. So a lot of the people that I worked with were neurologists, so I could sort of shop around and ask a bunch of them. And then eventually one day it just became like too much, and we just sort of said, no, we're just going to ED. We're going to get him in the hospital. He had an MRI. We saw the doctor in Western Australia who was sort of considered like the most experienced child neurologist in the state. He worked at the hospital, and he said to us, I don't know what it is. Doesn't really fit anything.
Hmm.
And he just, that was it. You know, he was just like, I'm comfortable enough with my knowledge of these things to know that this is rare. And we went away from that just really dreading what was to come for Erling because it looked bad. And then about 2 months later, I was talking to a private pediatrician that I worked for at the time, and that's Dr. Carver. And we were really fortunate that we spoke to her, and she said, yeah, we'll do another round of testing. She brought us in. And at that point, we weren't doing whole exome sequencing, we were just doing like a gene array. The way that they actually run those things is they'll go, look, here's the series of diseases which are associated with a set of symptoms. Let's just test for these ones. And it's pretty broad. They might test for like 200 diseases, but Tango 2 is like 1 in 70 million. They're not testing for Tango 2 on that.
Right.
But she had the one other patient in the state, and she'd sort of drawn some parallels. And she literally told me afterwards, she was like, I really thought that professionally I should put it on because there were similarities, but I never thought it would come back. It just was too rare.
Wow.
And she put it on, and when it came back as Tango 2, you know, we had like a private meeting. She didn't want to disclose what it was to me on the phone because she knew that I have some knowledge and would be able to read between the lines. And what was on the internet in 2019 was really grim. You know, if you read like the first paper, like most of the patient data is from, well, 50% of it is from patients that have passed away. So I'm pretty grateful she did that. But all of that was within a year of him having his first spell. So we were really grateful that we just chose the right person and it worked out okay because it could have been much, much longer.
You said the diagnosis was 2019, David?
Yeah, so August 2019 and Erling's born July 2017. So
Wow.
it's pretty much 2 years old
Yeah,
exactly.
the TANGO2 Research Foundation was founded in what, 2018, 2019 was really when things took off. And then I started with the foundation in 2020. And I remember just things, just starting to ramp up. So that
Yeah, I remember
I
that period.
remember.
It was you, Mike,
Mhm.
um, Amy, were you part of it at that stage?
Yep.
You would have been, yeah. There's
Yeah.
probably about sort of 10 of us. And so it was a small community. It's really grown since then, like the people that are really involved in the TANGO2 Research Foundation.
Yeah, it's been
So that's good.
incredible. Amanda, I would love to hear about your little bit of your
Um,
odyssey and the
yeah,
moment that
sure.
you received the diagnosis as well.
So when Seb went into hospital, and originally when he was around 1 year old, we spent lots of time in and out, because the symptoms would come and we'd be calling ambulances, and we were worried. And initially they said to us, look, we're going to rule out the big stuff first. and then move on to the smaller stuff if the big stuff doesn't come back. So we had MRIs, CT scans looking for space invading lesions, as they termed it. So brain tumor, stroke, blood clots, those kind of things were originally what they were worried about, because this hemiplegia looked a bit like stroke, but it resolved, so it couldn't have been that. So we went down those avenues, lots and lots. Then they looked at hip dysplasia. He had lots of hip x-rays to see if it was his hips causing that problems for him. And then eventually, after all of those tests always came back negative, nothing to see here. We had EEGs to look for epilepsy. Again, nothing on those, although subsequently he has actually developed epilepsy as an older child, but back then he didn't have a diagnosis or show any symptoms of that. And then we got to see a really wonderful neurologist who is still his neurologist now, Milani Chitra. She said, I think this is genetic. I think there's something going on here. So I'd like to refer to genetics. And in the system that we have, they said, well, you can have, like David, we can test for, this many known diseases or problems, but we don't think it's any of those really, because it doesn't really fit. So we had a kind of working diagnosis of episodic ataxia type 2, and then went for this genetic trial. So a study called the 100,000 Genome Project, which was rolled out across the UK, and it was done between Addenbrooke's Hospital and Cambridge University. And together they were doing whole genome sequencing for what looked like rare disease. And Seb's blood samples and mine and his dad's blood went in when he was 2. And then eventually, when he was 8, we got a diagnosis. So we waited a really long time. But when Seb was 2, it was 2013, and there had been no identified cases worldwide. And it wasn't until later that there was identified cases. And they keep putting data back through to see it as new research comes out. They keep putting data. And then we got a phone call when he was 8. It was the week of his 8th birthday that we got the phone call to say that they'd found something. Our geneticist was really excited that they'd found something, and Dan got the phone call. He's a farmer. He was on his tractor ploughing at the time, and she said, "Are you sitting down?" And then she told him, and then he rang me, and I rang her, and I was at work, and he was on the tractor, so we weren't together, which was and then I looked it up, and until then, I'd had this kind of idea that episodic ataxia might be the thing, and that was the sort of symptom, the main thing. But actually, it turns out that was just really a symptom of it. But I don't think I was scared until that phone call, really, and then got a phone call to say that what it was, and actually it was really serious. And then that sort of began the journey, really, of trying to find community, trying to find other people. I was straight on the internet researching. That day I found the TANGO2 Research Foundation. It was 5 weeks before your first conference. I nearly booked flights, but I felt like it was a bit soon for us. I was on there, like on the travel agent saying, can I get to Houston? That's where it was, wasn't it? The first one. Yep. But we'd only had the diagnosis for 5 weeks at that point, and it was too overwhelming, so we didn't come. But since then we've been trying to be as involved as we can, because we know that that's going to promote the best outcomes for all of the children, including Seb. So that's why we've become really involved. But that was his journey, really, and since that diagnosis, he's developed an awful lot more symptoms, really, and we find out a lot more about it. And somebody once beautifully explained the genetic disorder to me. It's like having a keyboard with a key missing, and you're trying to type, and it can show up anywhere in anything, any part of your body. So I always try and think about that analogy, because actually he's got a migraine disorder. Well, that's not separate, that's not different, that's part of his genetic code, and that's something that's affected him, or his epilepsy is part of it, or whatever it might be. So I try and use that to think about what goes on with him. But yeah, so he definitely, we went through a long journey of trying to find out, and then people not taking it really seriously because they didn't have the information, or they didn't really know. So they weren't sure how to treat it or what to do about it. And that still seems to be a bit of an ongoing battle at times, but we
Yeah,
get there.
yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic analogy. I think I'm going to have to use that to explain to Amanda. Yeah, you're right. Amy, you mentioned Kate taking multivitamins.
Mhm.
So I would love to hear a little bit about that because, as we know, the foundation provides a number of resources for the families, but I want to dig a little deeper into B complex, B5, B9 as a vitamin supplementation for reducing frequency of life-threatening crisis. But can you talk about a little bit of Katie's regimen, how you found out about it, and her process in that journey?
Sure. So, you know, not being diagnosed until she was 13, like I said, we were doing a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, and someone said to me at one point in time, there's a lot of stuff that's, gut related. And when she was little, we tried to get her to take like Flintstone vitamins or whatever. She just wouldn't do it. At that point in time, gummy vitamins actually started becoming popular. So probably 2014, 2015, we actually started giving her, and they were adult gummy vitamins. Just happened to be one that I, bought. I don't, Costco sold them. Um, and I mean, it originally didn't connect the dots, but looking back, when we started giving her those vitamins, all of those random intermittent people that went to that first conference remember me saying to the doctors, you need to figure out how to eliminate those random intermittent episodes, because that's what affects our day-to-day lives the most. But giving her those vitamins seemed to eliminate all of those. My husband and I both were like, she's staying on those things for life because we don't know if it's helping, but it's not hurting, and she seems really good on them. Come to find out, being part of the natural history study, I think some of the conversations that she had with me, Dr. Mayaki had with myself and maybe another parent or two, I think kind of led them down that path that, vitamins really are making a difference here. And I think we just got lucky. We got lucky at the time that the multivitamin that we gave her had B vitamins in it. Now, subsequently, now that we know B vitamins is helpful to our kids, we've upped Katie's level of B vitamins. She's still on those same multivitamins. She also gets a B complex, a double dose of B complex every morning. And she takes 500 milligrams of B5 every morning. It can be challenging. She's pretty good now about, Kate, did you take your B5? No, but I will. She can't swallow a pill. So we mix it in with, whatever she wants, Hawaiian punch, Gatorade, orange juice, apple juice, whatever. She doesn't really complain about it. But yeah, and, if they come out and they tell us that she needs more, we'll give her more. I think we don't see significant improvements in her. I think because her levels have been consistently higher because of the multivitamin that we've been giving her, and now they added B5. But I do see, like, if she doesn't take her gummies, she always takes her B5. That's a no-brainer. But if she doesn't take her gummies, I do see a little bit of a difference in her, whether it's just cognitively or energy wise. So I think, the vitamins definitely help. If you don't have your kids on vitamins, you need to give them on something, even if it's a multivitamin that has B vitamins in it.
Yeah. Dave, Amy mentioned the, Katie taking her vitamins with Hawaiian punch or juice or whatever it is. I know, Dave, you have an interesting story of how Erling was getting his B vitamins. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, sure. So when Erling was diagnosed, I'm a pretty proactive person, and I just jumped on Facebook and tried to find as many people that knew anything about Tango 2 as possible. So really quickly, I basically met the two most important international groups of my whole life, and that was Tango 2 Research Foundation and the Tango 2 Disease group on Facebook. Still the case. And on that Tango 2 Disease group, I asking parents, are you guys having these? We didn't have the word Tango 2 spells then, these weird episodes. And then some parents said, yeah, and take ubiquinol, which is not a B vitamin, and take a multivitamin or a B vitamin. And we found that it helps. And then there were a bunch of other parents saying, didn't make a difference. And when I spoke to a couple of doctors about it, they said that, look, mitochondrial cocktails have been a thing for a long time. There's not a lot of evidence that they work. You can try it if you want to. So we're at the stage where Erling was having those spells for up to 8 hours a day, and it was just wrecking his life. And it was like, what's the risk here? I haven't heard of anyone overdosing on a B vitamin or on ubiquinol. So we'll just go and buy it. And we bought ubiquinol. We bought a really good quality ubiquinol because it was available from the pharmacist. And we didn't really know anything about multivitamins. And we literally bought, it seems embarrassing now because it seems so negligent, but in Australia, there's like a effervescent tablet called Berocca, which you can use. It's kind of sold as like the adult medicine for a hangover. If you've sort of had a big day
Me
and you're
too.
feeling a bit gross, take a couple of Beroccas. And we literally just gave him some Berocca. And initially, we were convinced it was the ubiquinol because that seemed like a medicine. And slowly over time, we've reduced, eliminated the ubiquinol, and the Berocca remained. And then once we realized, I don't think it's the fizzy part of the Berocca that's making the difference, we looked at the packet and went, I think it's the B vitamins. So we told our doctor, and our doctor was one of these people. That's Dr. Carver. She's like, you know, you always have to measure the harm versus the benefit. And I think that the benefit here is probably much higher. We should just put him on a metabolic cocktail. And then we had like everything under the sun. And it was like biotin, B vitamins, all sorts of B vitamins, although not vitamin B5 at that point. We didn't know. Luckily, we were still giving all of this in Berocca, which had vitamin B5 in it. And I think Berocca actually has a relatively high dose of B5 because it's a cheap and readily available B vitamin. So they can fill up a cheap vitamin with B5. And then I had a bunch of other stuff like L-carnitine. And gradually we've kind of moved most of that stuff away so that now he just has 500 milligrams of B5. We also give him an additional multivitamin, B multi each day. And then he just has fiber supplementation. And that seems to be doing as good as everything else seemed to. Yeah, so
And he'll
it's
never have a
funny.
hangover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
right. It honestly, it feels embarrassing that that's what worked, but it was, I'm very grateful to Barocca.
Yeah, it's not embarrassing actually because there are individuals out there that, have can't swallow
Yeah.
and, have issues with B vitamins actually would be a very great alternative. I mean,
And
fizzy soda water, they would be a fan.
yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we have found many different ways. Mostly it's a little bit of juice. And Erling talking about being hungover, he takes it like a shot. So, because he doesn't like the taste of the B vitamin, so we just sort of like get him to shoot it down as quickly as possible. And what I was going to mention though is that all of his symptoms were resolved within 12 hours of starting Berocca. It was like incredible. And then after that, his development started moving on track again. And, you know, by the time he was 3 years old, he was probably only 6 months behind where his peers were. So it was looking really hopeful. I mean, the gap has gradually expanded, and this is pretty normal with disability because your curve is different, but he's still on an upward curve, and that's the important thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And Amanda, I think you have a pretty remarkable story. I've told us before about being at a conference and discovering
Yeah,
vitamins. If you
yeah.
can share that with us, that'd be great.
Of course. So I'd also, I think, seen probably a similar thread to you, Dave, on the Facebook family group, um, and known that B vitamins or a vitamin complex or B vitamins were important. So we had Seb on a liquid called Floridix, which is just a B complex liquid, thinking that was working and doing the right thing. And then we came to the family conference in 2022. I think that was the one in Florida, and
Mhm.
listening to the research we'd participated in natural history, or signed up to all of those things. And then B5 came, and I thought, I wonder, because leading up to that conference, actually, my husband and I had the conversation that we thought Seb was regressing. He was losing
Yes.
some speech, he was losing some function, and I thought, we wondered if we were beginning to kind of lose him a bit, and he was fading away, and he was withdrawing, and he lacked energy, and things seemed to be declining quite a lot for him, and we were quite concerned. Um, and in that lecture, B5 came up, and I just got onto my orders on my phone, and I was like, "There's no B5 in the B complex we're giving him," and it
Mm.
was just like an absolute moment. I was like, "Oh no, we thought we were doing the right thing, and it wasn't. It's not enough. It wasn't exactly the right thing." So I there and then ordered B5 to arrive at the doorstep when I got home. I went to Walmart the next day and bought some in there. And as it turned out, a few weeks after we got back, he started having tonic-clonic seizures. And I think actually the decline was the beginning of his epilepsy. And that really did take its toll. But once his epilepsy was under control with the medication, and he had the B5 in him, he doesn't use his wheelchair anymore. He doesn't have splints anymore. He speaks in full sentences. He reads, he writes. He is independent in almost all activities. And he is really thriving, and just, I can't believe, and everybody around him can't believe the difference in this young man who is just enjoying life to the full and really does thrive. And he just, you know, he takes B5 in the morning, 500 milligrams, and a B complex in the evening as well. And he's learned how to swallow tablets, which
Wow.
honestly is amazing. So he has got lots of tablets because he has other things that he needs to take medication for, and they're all tablet form now. I mean, he takes, I think it's something like 14 a day, throughout the day as it goes, and he just shoves two or three in his mouth at once. Down it goes. He's learned how to do it, so he's a bit of a superstar for that, because I don't think even all adults can do that. And some of these tablets are big. So if his epilepsy one is huge, and he just pops it in and down it goes. So he's mastered that skill, which is wonderful. But yeah, all his physical, he's gone through puberty over the last 12 months. So suddenly he's got a deep voice and facial hair, and he's 6 foot tall. And puberty, I mean, his seizures increased a little bit during that summer of puberty, but he had no episodes. He had no Tango 2 spells, and no metabolic crisis. And puberty, he survived it really well. In fact, he's thriving through it. So that was a period of time that we were quite worried about. And I am hand on heart fully believe that if he wasn't taking the B vitamins every day, then he would not have gone through that quite so well. And he actually recognizes now. So sometimes he'll say, "Oh, if he's got a bit of a cold or he's feeling a bit tired, he'll come to me and he'll say, I'm going to take another B vitamin." I'll say, "Okay, you
Mm.
take another one." So sometimes he self increases because he feels like he needs to have another one. So um, yeah, so that's a really good outcome for him. He's starting to recognize that that's the thing that helps him, and he does name all of his medication. He'll say, "This one is for my seizures. This one is for my headaches. This one is for my eyes. This one is for my energy. This one is for my brain." So he knows what they're all for, and he names all of those. So I think he recognizes that when he needs more energy, he takes a bit of extra B5.
That's incredible. And I certainly recognize the progress that he's made because the
Absolutely.
2022 conference, I was taller. But the last
Yeah.
time I saw him in London, he's much taller than me.
He's much taller than me now as well. He's verging on 6 foot tall. So yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Um, well, I can just talk and talk with the three of you all day. I think we might have to schedule a part two, but I want to end and wrap things up. But before we do that, I do want to have one more question. I wanted to ask, you know, all three of you, this community often refers to our patients, our children, our young adults as TANGO2 warriors. And so now that you've navigated the path of diagnosis, what does that word mean to your family today? Because it's very apparent that you've been through so many hardships and successes at the same time. So if you can share with me, what does the word Tango 2 warrior mean to you? If we can start with David.
Well, this question I found quite hard to answer actually. So I wrote something
Yeah.
and I felt like when I wrote it, I thought that's really about it for me. So I'll basically just read through that.
Yes,
Um,
please.
yeah, his disability is relatively mild compared to many people with a disability. Like we're realistic that Erling has a disability, and most people would recognize it within the first 10 seconds of seeing him. But it is mild, yet it does affect all aspects of his life. He's physically disabled. He has an abnormal gait. He's pretty weak. He's unbalanced. He struggles with fine motor skills. His speech, while good, he's a really good speaker, huge vocab, but he's very slurred, and it's more taxing for him to generate speech than other people. He has huge difficulties with attention and when doing intellectual tasks. Although he is quite bright and people comment on his intelligence, he tries and things just don't work as fast for Erling. It takes him a long time and a lot of will to focus on something. He has sensory issues and he also has a lot of self-stimming behaviors. But nonetheless, Erling carries on with life. He pretty much wakes up ridiculously optimistic every day and trusts that good things might happen, even if a bad thing happened like 30 seconds ago. Some of what this disease throws at him would remove the dignity and will of most people. And at times, as a parent, I carry this burden like worse than he does. This is what it means to be a Tango 2 warrior to me, that despite what Tango 2 disease brings, he carries on with more courage than those around him. And it's pretty amazing to see. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, David. Amy, would you like to share?
I don't know if I can follow that. Everything that David said, I would agree with. Being a Tango 2 warrior is just it's just a battle, right? Every day, every phase of life is a battle. And not only the Tango 2 person, but the Tango 2 family is a warrior and going into battle. Having to face new challenges all the time. I think our kids are so resilient. I mean, she's 22, but this will always be my kid. They're just so resilient. Like David said, they wake up, well, for the most part, unless it's 7 o'clock in the morning, with smiles on their face and, excitement for the day. But it's that, the journey and the battle, from one phase to the next that I think, it needs them to be warriors in order to get through that. And the families, you can't skip, the challenges to the families. Like David said, I think I worry more about her being a Tango 2 patient than she does. And I worry about, the next phase of her life and, down the road than she even thinks about. So.
Incredible. Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy. Amanda?
Well, I mean, now I have to follow two people. I just what you both said is absolutely on the mark, and I think that word resilience is a really important word, and I think for me that summarizes the warriorness for Seb, is that resilience. He wakes up 99% of the time with a smile on his face. He takes everything in his stride. He teaches us all so much about how to live your life, and I think it's really wonderful. And actually, what's come about as from our family, I think you could go down the line of, there's a lot of anticipatory grief. There is a lot of grief associated with having a child with a life-threatening disorder and being part of a community where not all children do survive. And we're very grateful to every single family that's part of this, and every single person that's sold a cake or run a marathon or done anything to raise money and awareness, and everybody that works so hard. And that does help with that aspect of things. But it's a hard journey nonetheless. But it's about a new normal, and it's about a different normal to what you maybe expected to have as a parent. You know, you're pregnant and you're creating a family and you have all these expectations, and then it's different, and it's not what you thought it might be, and it is not what you might have expected. And your future as a parent, as an adult, may look different to how you expected to, and you have to accommodate that, and you have to get used to that. And actually, Seb is just so positive and happy and resilient. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, he's a typical 15-year-old that gets really stroppy too. But he will make anybody laugh as much as he can. And he's really acutely aware of other people, and whether they might use a patronizing tone with him. He just doesn't speak to them. And I think, well, wonderful. That's a really great way. And he's got a really keen sense of who people are really quickly. And isn't that wonderful? And he teaches his brothers and us so much about living life to the max and being happy with every day and being grateful for what you've got. And I feel like that's warriorness for us and our family. And that's what he teaches us and everybody around him. So for that, we're very grateful. There are sad times and there are hard times, but overwhelmingly, he shows us resilience.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Can't agree with you all more. And and it's not just about them. So at the end of the day, I feel like every single day I learn from the parents so much, and you all are so, so incredibly inspiring. Well, thank you so much for doing this today. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Please give your babies a hug for me. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.